The millionaire sneered. "Translate this for me, and I'll pay you my entire month's salary." The maid's calm response left him momentarily speechless. Mocking laughter echoed through James Whitmore's sleek, glass-walled office in downtown Seattle. The wealthy CEO, brimming with pride, was in high spirits, entertaining the board members with what he thought was a clever joke, when in fact it was deeply demeaning to his housekeeper. But James had no idea that this seemingly harmless prank would set in motion a chain of events destined to upend his life forever. The laughter bounced off the polished steel and shimmering glass all around the modern office. At the center of the lavish celebration stood James Whitmore, the powerful CEO of Whitmore Innovations, his face glowing from champagne and boundless pride. Having just closed a $4 billion deal, he felt on top of the world. His senior executives surrounded him like courtiers, greeting every word he spoke with obsequious laughter. "What a fantastic evening, isn't it?" James boomed, raising his champagne glass high as his gaze swept across the table, where his wealthy, influential colleagues showered him with praise. "Absolutely, James. Nobody else could have pulled this off," chimed in Thomas Bradley, the executive vice president, his cheeks flushed with drink and pride. Thank you," James nodded smugly, a mocking smile playing on his lips. But then his eyes settled on a figure quietly moving near the entrance, preparing to clear the glasses from the table. That black woman was Evelyn Carter, the maid who'd served his family for over 15 years. As if struck by a sudden notion, James's lips curled into a smirk, and he called out, "Evelyn, come here for a moment." Evelyn flinched at the abrupt summons, her eyes betraying a flicker of confusion, but she quickly composed herself. After 15 years of enduring his orders and taunts, she was used to such treatment. The woman in her late 30s approached the table with her head bowed, trying to hide her face from the contemptuous stares around her. James grabbed a thick dossier from the table and thrust it toward her. The stack of documents was written entirely in Japanese, packed with dense technical jargon. "Evelyn," he said, "my lawyers have sent over this technical contract from our Japanese partner, and apparently not even our in-house translation team can make sense of it." He paused for effect, the mocking grin widening. "Translate this by tomorrow morning, and I'll pay you my entire monthly salary, $500,000. His proclamation set the room alight with cruel laughter. Those piercing guffaws felt like knives plunging into Evelyn's already bruised dignity. The powerful executive stared at her, as if waiting for her to falter and fail under their merciless joke. "Oh, James, you're so heartless!" Margaret Lawson, the CFO, exclaimed between laughs, covering her mouth. "You know a maid like her has no hope of translating something this complex, right? How wicked." James shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "It's all in good fun, Margaret. Honestly, I'm giving Evelyn a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Not everyone gets to earn $500,000 overnight." The laughter crashed over Evelyn like a merciless wave. Scornful, racially tinged glances felt like daggers slicing into her resolve. Her heart pounded, and her hand gripped the dossier so tightly her knuckles whitened. In that moment, it felt as though all the pain and humiliation she'd bottled up for 15 years was crushing her. But Evelyn did not tremble. She lifted her head, and for the first time, her determined gaze met James Whitmore's. A strange silence fell over the room as Evelyn's fearless eyes locked onto his astonished stare. "I accept your challenge, Mr. Whitmore," she said, her voice remarkably steady. James hesitated, then erupted into even louder laughter, and those around him joined in, their mirth laced with ridicule. "Excellent! I'll expect your flawless translation by tomorrow morning, Evelyn," he declared, lifting his glass to take a long sip. "But don't worry if you fail. I won't hold it against you after all." He shot Evelyn a malicious glance. "I never expected much from you to begin with." Evelyn bowed politely and turned on her heel, stepping out of the sleek office. The mocking laughter trailed behind her, each echo a reminder of her lowly status in the eyes of the powerful. Yet deep within her, something had been ignited. A flame of self-respect and a hunger for justice, suppressed for 15 years. As she walked down the long, cold hallway, her eyes blazed with resolve and strength. She would prove to them that beneath her humble exterior and the skin they scorned lay intelligence, dignity, and extraordinary power, qualities they would never dare underestimate again. The mocking laughter still echoed behind Evelyn like relentless ghosts. As she closed the large door leading into the long corridor, the pale silver glow of the modern light fixtures dimmed, returning the familiar yet utterly cold silence. Evelyn walked slowly, her legs as heavy as lead dragging across the luxurious gray carpet, alone, worth more than her entire annual income. Each step sounded like a painful reminder of the vast gulf between her station in life and the glamorous world of the powerful. But what truly pierced her heart was not just the wealth disparity, but the contemptuous stares and deep-seated disdain aimed at her simply because she was a black woman. Evelyn reached the kitchen, the only place in this sprawling corporate mansion where she could find any comfort. Her trembling hand set the thick, technical dossier, bristling with Japanese characters, onto the cold granite countertop. She drew in a slow, steadying breath, trying to calm herself. She was used to enduring her wealthy employer's ridicule and condescension. But tonight, James Whitmore's vicious insult had left her choking on her own emotions. For more than 15 years, Evelyn Carter had served the Whitmore family with unwavering loyalty. From the moment she first set foot in this grand corporate estate, she'd tried to stay invisible, quietly fulfilling her duties without ever expecting recognition from her employers. To them, Evelyn was never truly human. She was a tool, a convenient object easily forgotten when not needed. Evelyn clearly remembered every moment she'd cared for the Whitmore children, Sophie and Ethan, from the instant they were born. The long nights tending their fevers, soothing their nightmares, calming their childhood fears. She loved them as if they were her own, even though she knew that once grown, they would look at her with the same cold distance as their parents. And so it happened. As Sophie and Ethan reached adulthood, they gradually forgot the woman who had silently stood behind every success and safety in their childhood. Her loneliness deepened when Mrs. Whitmore, James's wife, fell gravely ill. Evelyn was the only one devoted to her care, witnessing day after day the proud woman's gradual decline under the merciless onslaught of cancer. In Mrs. Whitmore's final days, she weakly clasped Evelyn's hand, her eyes shining with a gratitude she could never express in words. In that moment, Evelyn felt a rare warmth in this otherwise icy household. But when Mrs. Whitmore passed away, James's cruelty only intensified. Evelyn returned to her old role, slipping once again into the shadows that defined her existence, bearing every scornful glance and hurtful remark, knowing it was the price she paid to survive here. The most painful truth was that in all those 15 years, James never once cared about Evelyn's personal life. He never knew that she had a small family, once harbored grand dreams, or how much she'd sacrificed to secure a safe life and bright future for her loved ones. To James, Evelyn was just a black maid, unworthy of attention, unworthy of respect or empathy. Evelyn had always believed she could endure that contempt and racism forever. But tonight, James's cruel joke and mocking challenge had awakened something deep within her. For the first time in many years, she felt anger. A surge of outrage mingled with self-respect and a burning desire to reclaim her dignity. Standing alone in the silent kitchen, Evelyn gripped the Japanese dossier tighter. She knew this challenge was about more than money. It was her chance to restore her honor and prove she was not the worthless nobody James and his elite circle thought her to be. She picked up her phone and sent a quick message to an old friend, Professor Daniel Lee, who had worked with her before life took her in a different direction. A fierce determination washed over her as she hit send. Tonight would be long, a grueling battle between prejudice and pride. Glancing at the wall clock, she saw the hands inching toward 10 p.m. She inhaled deeply, her eyes reflecting a strength she had never felt in 15 years of living in the shadows. Tonight, she would step out of the darkness, not for money, not for fame, but to reclaim the dignity that had been trampled for far too long. With her resolve ignited, Evelyn opened the dossier. The complex characters before her eyes felt like a dare. She offered a small, confident smile, no longer afraid or despondent. For she knew that tomorrow, when the morning light streamed through the grand windows, she would no longer be an invisible woman, scorned and overlooked. She would be Evelyn Carter, a person worthy of being seen, respected, and recognized for her true worth. The soft silver light in the kitchen fell across Evelyn's face as she focused intently on each complex line of Japanese characters in the dossier. The familiar symbols began to emerge, as if greeting an old friend she hadn't seen in years. Evelyn gave a faint, bitter smile at that recognition, a feeling she had once cherished, but had been forced to bury long ago. She paused, her eyes drifting into the darkness beyond the window, her mind unintentionally slipping back to a past she'd carefully tucked away like a secret treasure known only to herself. 15 years ago, Evelyn Carter wasn't Evelyn Carter at all. She was Dr. Lauren Mitchell, a renowned academic at the University of Washington. Lauren Mitchell's name appeared in leading scholarly journals on linguistics, technical translation, and intercultural communication. Her lectures were always packed, and international conferences eagerly reserved her a place at the podium. At that time, Lauren had everything: a brilliant career, an impeccable reputation in academia, and a future she had spent her youth building. Then it all came crashing down so fast, she never had a chance to understand what was happening. One fateful day, Lauren was summoned to a meeting with the university board. The familiar faces of her colleagues, once friends, now stared at her with chilling coldness. No one defended her when the accusations were laid out: academic fraud, plagiarism in her research, serious breaches of professional ethics. Lauren tried to explain, presenting clear evidence of her integrity, but no one would listen. Only then did she realize this was not a simple misunderstanding, but a calculated scheme to remove her, the only black woman on the tenured faculty, from a coveted position. Finally, the university dismissed her, wiping away the reputation she had built over years. Her honor and career collapsed beneath baseless allegations. Lauren knew she'd been framed, but she was powerless against a system that had always treated her as an outsider, an unwanted element. She attempted to sue the university, but every door slammed shut in her face. Her lawyers conceded that, given her race and social standing, she stood little chance of justice in an environment dedicated to protecting the reputations of powerful white figures. Having lost everything, Lauren Mitchell made the agonizing choice to disappear from her former life, to abandon her name and fame, to shield herself from further attacks. She took the name Evelyn Carter, moved to Seattle, and quietly found a lowly, anonymous job, one that would allow her to be easily forgotten. Housekeeping proved the perfect cover to hide her past and true identity. For 15 years, Evelyn lived like a ghost, relinquishing all her ambitions and desires in pursuit of peace in the safety of obscurity. Yet, no matter how deeply she buried her history, the wounds never truly healed. Sitting silently in the kitchen, Evelyn's heart still ached at memories of former colleagues who turned away, and of students who adored her now looking at her with suspicion and disappointment, all because she was a successful Black woman exceeding the limits society expected from people like her. Now, after 15 years under the shadow of that painful past, Evelyn once again faced James Whitmore's mockery and contempt, a wealthy man who believed power and money entitled him to demean anyone, especially a Black woman like her. But this time was very different. Evelyn was no longer the fragile woman powerless before authority. Over the past 15 years, she had endured and learned a priceless lesson in resilience and endurance. Now, Evelyn Carter resolved she would not remain silent. She would fight to reclaim her honor and her worth, things she should never have lost in the first place. Her gaze returned to the page. Those intricate Japanese characters no longer felt like a challenge, but like old friends beckoning her back to her true self. Lauren Mitchell had not lost her talent or her sharp mind. They were merely waiting to awaken, ready to prove her true value. Evelyn offered a small, determined smile, and, pen in hand, began meticulously annotating each word, crafting precise, accurate translations. She felt the fire of resolve burn brighter than ever, ready to incinerate every prejudice and injustice she'd endured over the years. Tonight, Lauren Mitchell would no longer be a name buried in the past. Tonight, she returned as Evelyn Carter, a woman poised to reclaim justice, dignity, and her right to live with the true value she had always deserved. The wall clock chimed twice, marking 2 a.m. Evelyn rubbed her eyes, her shoulders aching from hours spent hunched over the narrow desk in the cramped maid's quarters. Before her lay pages packed with interwoven Japanese and English notes, bathed in the soft amber glow of the desk lamp. Her face drawn with fatigue, yet set with unshakable resolve. Though her translation skills were as sharp as ever, this was no ordinary document. The deep technical jargon on artificial intelligence and data privacy made Evelyn realize she needed help to guarantee absolute accuracy. After a brief hesitation, she picked up her phone and dialed the one person she'd quietly stayed in touch with over the years, Daniel Lee, her former University of Washington colleague, and the only person who had ever fully believed in her innocence during the wrongful scandal years ago. The phone rang on and on before Daniel finally answered, his voice groggy but laced with concern. "Evelyn, is everything okay?" Evelyn's heart pounded hearing that familiar tone. She inhaled deeply to steady herself. "Daniel, I'm sorry to call so late. I really need your help with something urgent." Instantly alert, Daniel's voice turned serious. "Go ahead, I'm listening." "I'm translating a technical agreement for a technology partnership with a Japanese firm," Evelyn explained briskly, her tone cautious. "It's full of complex AI and intellectual property terms I need to verify. Can you help?" Without a moment's hesitation, Daniel replied, "Absolutely. Email it to me right now. I'll look at it immediately." Evelyn exhaled with relief and quickly sent the scanned document. As she waited for Daniel's review, she couldn't stop replaying the troubling details she'd uncovered. Something was very wrong with this contract. Something dangerous concealed beneath layers of technical wording that even Whitmore Innovations' lawyers had missed. Less than 30 minutes later, Evelyn's phone rang again. She answered breathlessly, her heart racing at Daniel's tense voice on the other end. "Evelyn, I've gone through the contract. You're right. This isn't a standard partnership agreement. Some clauses are extremely cunning, deliberately using technical language to mask the real issues." Evelyn felt blood chill in her veins. "Can you explain?" Daniel's tone grew grave. "They've embedded a clause granting the Japanese company full access to Whitmore Innovations' core AI systems as soon as the contract is signed. On top of that, another provision transfers all intellectual property rights for the collaboratively developed technologies to their Tokyo subsidiary. It's a highly sophisticated technology takeover, potentially worth billions." Evelyn's limbs went cold. James Whitmore, the man she regarded as her personal enemy for his racist contempt, had no idea he stood on the brink of losing his entire empire. Even more heartbreaking, thousands of ordinary employees like her would suffer catastrophic losses if this plot succeeded. "Daniel, are you absolutely sure?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. "Absolutely," Daniel affirmed. "Evelyn, you've uncovered a serious conspiracy, and you must be extremely careful. These people are not to be underestimated. If they realize you know the truth, they could do anything to silence you." Evelyn gripped the phone with renewed clarity. She understood that this was no mere personal challenge. She was on the front lines of a life-or-death struggle between justice and power, truth and the bottomless greed of the wealthy. "I understand, Daniel. Thank you so much," Evelyn whispered. "Stay safe, Evelyn," Daniel urged. "I'm here for you. Call me if anything happens." After hanging up, Evelyn sat in the darkness for a long moment. The weak amber light fell across her fully translated pages, clear, precise, unflinching. She realized she could no longer shrink from her responsibility or hide in the shadows. Tonight had become her crucible, forcing her to confront the ghosts of her past and granting her one final chance to prove she was stronger than the injustices and prejudices that had pushed her into obscurity. Rising, Evelyn walked to the small window and gazed out at the sky, faintly brightening with dawn. A new day was about to begin, one in which Evelyn Carter would no longer be the invisible woman. She would step into the light and face the powerful to defend justice and truth. Her eyes were steady, her spirit ablaze with fierce determination, because tonight had awakened the strong woman she had long ago lost. The pale dawn light slowly crept through the grand windows, gently rousing the Whitmore estate from its slumber. Evelyn sat quietly in the familiar little kitchen, eyes fixed on the translation she'd spent the entire night perfecting. The neatly arranged pages were precise in every detail, accompanied by thorough notes on the contract's hidden, dangerous clauses. Evelyn's gaze was calm and resolute, yet her heart pounded, for she knew that in just a few minutes, her life would change forever. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway, followed by James Whitmore's commanding voice. "Everyone, head to the conference room. Let's finalize the last steps of our deal with our Japanese partner." Evelyn rose, smoothed her uniform one last time, and stepped out of the kitchen with rare confidence. In her hands, she carried the translated document and her critical annotations, meticulously prepared and crystal clear. A flutter of nerves rose in her chest, but she understood fully the magnitude of this moment. As Evelyn entered the spacious boardroom, every pair of eyes turned toward her, a mix of surprise and annoyance on their faces. James's brow furrowed. He was clearly displeased to see her in a space he considered the domain of the powerful. "Evelyn, what are you doing here?" James snapped, impatience in his tone. Evelyn walked to the head of the table and placed the dossier in front of him, her expression composed as she faced her powerful employer. "I've completed the translation you requested last night, Mr. Whitmore," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I believe everyone should review it before signing the contract." Murmurs rippled across the room as the executives exchanged skeptical, mocking glances. James raised an eyebrow and scoffed. He couldn't fathom that a black maid like Evelyn could accomplish what even his expert translators couldn't. "You're joking, right, Evelyn?" he sneered. "You really think you're capable of understanding something this complex?" "I'm not joking, sir," Evelyn replied firmly, her voice unwavering. "Please read through this translation." Reluctantly, James picked up the folder and began to read, a mocking smile still on his face. But within minutes, and that smile vanished, replaced by confusion, then by stark fear. "What is this?" he muttered, his hand trembling as he flipped through the pages. The other directors quickly opened the translation themselves, their faces draining of color. A heavy silence fell as they all grasped the severity of the dangerous clauses Evelyn had uncovered. Finally, Evelyn broke the silence in a calm but powerful voice. "As you can see, this document contains provisions your prior translation team missed. These clauses would transfer all intellectual property rights to the Japanese partner and grant them full access to our company's internal AI systems, risking the theft of technology worth billions." James leapt to his feet, pale and trembling with panic and anger. "How did you know this? How could a maid possibly—" he stammered, disbelief etched on his face. Evelyn met his gaze without flinching. "Because I was once a linguistics professor at the University of Washington, specializing in technical translation. I understand these complex terms better than anyone in this room. I've warned you here to prevent this company from suffering catastrophic losses." The room fell into absolute silence. The very executives who had dismissed her now stared at Evelyn as if seeing her for the first time, eyes full of astonishment, shame, and deep regret. James slumped back into his chair, covering his face with shaking hands. He felt the full weight of humiliation and helplessness before a woman he'd spent 15 years treating as invisible. "Evelyn, I don't know what to say. You've just saved this entire company from disaster," James murmured, stripped of his usual arrogance. "I don't need your thanks, Mr. Whitmore," Evelyn replied quietly. "But I hope you remember this. Never underestimate anyone based on their skin color or their job." Without waiting for his response, Evelyn turned and left the boardroom, leaving everyone in stunned admiration. She knew this moment had forever changed how they saw her. No longer would she be the invisible woman they overlooked. Evelyn had proven that true worth lies not in appearance or social status, but in dignity, intellect, and the courage to face any challenge. The conference room door clicked shut behind Evelyn, and a heavy silence settled over the vast space. James Whitmore sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the crisp, precise words Evelyn had so carefully translated and highlighted. Each page laid bare the imminent danger, like a dagger aimed straight at his heart and reputation. James felt his face go pale, a chill running through him. He had never experienced fear like this. The gut-wrenching realization that he'd nearly driven his entire company off a cliff. Whitmore Innovations, the empire he'd spent over 15 years building, had been saved from a billion-dollar takeover thanks to the black woman he'd always belittled and mocked. The thought both relieved and humiliated him. Thomas Bradley, the executive vice president, broke the suffocating silence. "James, we almost lost everything." James glanced around, seeing panic and doubt in his colleagues' eyes. But above all, he saw something deeper, profound disappointment, a loss of faith in the leadership and judgment he once prided himself on. Margaret Lawson, the CFO, spoke next, her voice trembling with reproach. "I can't believe this, James. How did our legal team miss something like this? How did a housekeeper uncover such a massive loophole while we were completely blind?" Margaret's words struck James like a punch to the gut. He lowered his head, trying to hide the shame swelling inside him. Always proud, always so confident in his own judgment of people. Now he faced the truth that the woman he'd scorned, whom he'd never once bothered to know, was the only person to save him from the worst catastrophe of his career. "This is entirely my fault," James confessed in a near whisper, a stark contrast to his usual self-assured tone. "I was arrogant and complacent. I never imagined—" He trailed off, his voice choked by overwhelming shame. "That Evelyn could understand and translate this complex document so perfectly?" Margaret cut in, still seething. "James, it's not just about the translation. You never valued her. You never saw her as a real person, with talent and worth." James looked at Margaret, shame and confusion in his eyes. She was right. For more than 15 years, he'd treated Evelyn as a household convenience, something easily replaced. He'd never cared about her life, or known of the hardships she'd endured. He remembered now Evelyn's steady, composed gaze as she presented her findings to everyone. In that moment, he realized how little he truly knew about the woman who had quietly cared for his family all those years. Thomas's voice cut in, grave and serious. "James, this isn't a small oversight. We almost lost control of our core technology and internal data. A hair's breadth from now, this company wouldn't exist." James nodded slowly, his palms slick with cold sweat. He'd never felt so powerless and afraid. A crushing sense of failure and loss of control washed over him, making him feel weaker than he ever had in his life. He glanced down at the dossier again, remorse tightening his chest as he recalled the cruel joke he'd played on Evelyn just the night before. It pained him to realize that his own blind arrogance and prejudice had nearly destroyed everything he'd built. James rose to his feet, striving to steady himself. "I will take full responsibility for this. I must make amends immediately." "How do you intend to do that?" Margaret asked, skepticism in her tone. James lifted his head, his eyes for the first time free of arrogance and filled with genuine resolve. "I will do what I should have done long ago. I will apologize to Evelyn, sincerely, in front of everyone, and I will ensure she receives the recognition and respect she rightly deserves for her skill and contributions." The board members stared at James in stunned silence. For the first time, they witnessed real humility from the man known for his hubris. But James knew this wasn't about personal pride anymore. This was his duty to the company, and above all, to the woman he had unwittingly mistreated for 15 years. He drew a deep breath, pushing back the panic and shame flooding him. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but this was his chance to right his wrongs, reclaim his own integrity, and restore justice to the woman he had long undervalued. James stood silent before the small door leading down to the kitchen, Evelyn's daily refuge for more than 15 years. He hesitated, his hand trembling as it touched the cold doorknob. A wave of unease mixed with shame pressed on his chest, but he knew he couldn't avoid this any longer. Taking a deep breath, he gently pushed the door open. Inside, Evelyn was quietly arranging her familiar kitchen tools. Morning sunlight filtered through the small window, casting a soft glow over her slender frame. Yet it couldn't hide the tired lines at the corners of her eyes, the silent traces of 15 years of unseen sacrifice he'd never noticed. "Evelyn," James said softly, his voice suddenly hesitant and unfamiliar, a stark contrast to his usual arrogance. Evelyn turned to look at him, her expression calm but distant, as if she'd been preparing for this moment for a long time. "What is it, Mr. Whitmore?" she asked, her tone no longer the obedient sweetness he was used to, but clear and resolute. James felt his heart tighten at her chilly words. He stepped further into the room, awkward shame catching in his throat. "I wanted to talk with you, Evelyn. I owe you an apology." Evelyn's face remained composed. She set down her kitchen towel on the counter and met his gaze, as if looking straight into his soul. "What are you apologizing for, Mr. Whitmore? Yesterday evening, or these past 15 years?" James jumped at her pointed question, as though she'd stripped bare all his thoughts. He swallowed hard, searching for words that felt trivial against such stark truth. "For everything," he finally admitted, his voice shaking. "I'm sorry for treating you so poorly, for my contempt and neglect over all these years." Evelyn was silent for a moment, her eyes still locked on him. Then she spoke softly but firmly, each word carrying weight. "Mr. Whitmore, when I first walked into this house 15 years ago, I knew I was just a maid. What I never expected was that during all those years of devoted service, I would never be seen as a real person. You never asked me how I felt, or what my life was like. You never knew my real name, my past, or the pain I endured simply because of my skin color." James lowered his head, feeling as though he'd just received a cruel slap. Evelyn's words were a mirror reflecting his deep selfishness and wrongdoing. Her voice caught slightly as she continued, but remained unwavering. "I cared for your children as if they were my own, but when they grew up, they treated me just as you did, like I was invisible. I cared for your late wife in her final battle with cancer, yet you never once asked if I was tired or hurting. You never saw me, Mr. Whitmore. To you, I was just a convenient, replaceable black maid, unworthy of respect or concern." James closed his eyes, each of Evelyn's words stabbing at his heart. He felt small and contemptible in the face of her painful truth. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with genuine remorse for the first time in his life. "I know you may never forgive me, Evelyn," he said quietly, "but I truly am sorry for my callousness and unfair treatment. I don't know how to make up for what I've done, but I want you to know how deeply I regret it." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. Then she sighed, her expression softening slightly, yet still resolute. "An apology isn't enough, Mr. Whitmore. What I expect is for you to rethink how you treat others, especially those who are small, marginalized, and people of color like me. You have no idea how deeply your racism and indifference have wounded me. Remember that every person deserves respect, no matter who they are, the color of their skin, or the work they do." James nodded slowly, guilt heavy in his heart. "I promise you, Evelyn, I will change. I will ensure this never happens again. Not just to you, but to anyone in my company or my family." Evelyn was quiet for a moment longer. Then she nodded. "I hope you truly mean that. Not just for me, but for yourself, for everyone who works for you, and for the future of your family." James looked at Evelyn, and for the first time truly saw her. Strong, resilient, and deeply compassionate. He knew this conversation had opened a new path, a chance to correct the grave mistakes he'd made over 15 years. He exhaled, gratitude and hope mingling in his chest, understanding that at last he was stepping onto the right path, one of genuine understanding, respect, and compassion. The moment Evelyn finished speaking, a heavy silence fell over the small kitchen, as weighty as the emotions swelling in both their hearts. James stood still, his gaze fixed on the floor, as if seeking courage there to face his wrongs. Evelyn remained upright, her eyes strong yet compassionate, waiting for the reaction of the powerful man before her. Finally, James drew a deep, shuddering breath, as if attempting to shake off all the shame and burden crushing him. He slowly raised his head and met Evelyn's eyes with an unprecedented sincerity. "Evelyn, I know words can't erase the pain I've caused you. I've been thoughtless and selfish, but I don't want to stop at an apology. I want to do something truly meaningful to make up for the years you've endured." Evelyn furrowed her brow slightly, suspicion flickering in her gaze, but she said nothing as she listened. James stepped closer, his voice firm. "First, I want to fulfill the promise I made last night. You completed that translation brilliantly, saving the company from catastrophic loss. So the $500,000 I promised, I'll transfer it to you right away." James reached into his jacket pocket, withdrew a personal check, uncapped an expensive fountain pen, and carefully wrote the large sum. His hand trembled with emotion and tension as he wrote. He knew this money couldn't fully make up for all Evelyn had suffered. But it was at least a start, an act of genuine apology rather than empty words. Evelyn stared at the check, wide-eyed and taken aback. She shook her head lightly, her voice gentle but resolute. "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. Truly, but I don't need that kind of money. What I did was simply my responsibility as someone with self-respect." James shook his head, his eyes unwavering. "Evelyn, this isn't charity or pity. It's a small measure of the recognition you deserve. Please accept it as my first act of restitution." Evelyn studied James silently for a long moment, gauging the sincerity behind his words. Finally, she nodded and accepted the check with hands that trembled slightly. She felt a mix of relief and awkwardness at this unexpected, decisive gesture from a man she'd never seen so earnest. But James was not finished. He inhaled deeply, his gaze more focused and serious than ever as he continued. "I know this may surprise you further, but I'm completely serious. I want you to take on a new position within the company, one that truly matches your skills and experience." Evelyn gasped, astonishment in her eyes. "A new position? Are you sure, Mr. Whitmore?" "I've never been more certain," James replied, decisively, without hesitation. "I want you to serve as a senior leader in our international division, directly overseeing all critical contracts and projects with foreign partners. I know you're the best person for the role." Evelyn fell silent, her eyes wide with amazement. Her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and profound emotion. She had never imagined that the man who'd belittled her for 15 years would stand before her and offer such a significant role. This proposal was not only an acknowledgement of her expertise, it was James's deepest apology, proof that he truly recognized her worth. James continued, his voice steady and sincere. "I made a grave mistake in failing to recognize your value and ability. I let prejudice and racism cloud my judgment, but I promise you I will change. And I believe that with your talent and dedication, you will lead this company beyond anything I've ever imagined." Evelyn remained silent, emotions swirling in her chest, joy, pride, and a touch of disbelief. She knew this offer could forever alter her life, drawing her back to a path she thought she'd abandoned. Seeing her hesitation, James added gently, "I understand you may need time to consider this, Evelyn. That's perfectly fine, but I want you to know how serious I am, and how much I hope you'll say yes. The company needs you, and so do I." Evelyn took a slow, steadying breath, feeling the weight and significance of the decision before her. She looked up at James, determination and inner strength shining clearly in her eyes. "I will give your offer serious thought, Mr. Whitmore. But I also need you to promise me one thing. Going forward, this company must change completely. There must be no more racism or prejudice, not even in the smallest way." James nodded firmly, his voice resolute and heartfelt. "You have my word, Evelyn. I will do everything in my power to ensure that. From today on, You will never again endure indifference or discrimination." Evelyn met James's gaze, sensing the genuine sincerity in his words. For the first time in many years, she felt true relief and trust. An unwavering faith in the future, in justice, and in the transformative power of sincerity and compassion. Evelyn's gaze lingered on James's face, as if weighing every ounce of sincerity hidden in his powerful features. She took a deep breath, realizing this was the moment to voice the conditions she had harbored for years, conditions she knew more clearly and firmly than ever before. "I appreciate the sincerity of your offer, Mr. Whitmore," Evelyn said slowly, her tone cautious but unmistakably clear. "But I cannot accept without certain guarantees. This isn't just important to me, it's essential for the entire company." James nodded immediately, understanding that any condition Evelyn proposed was both reasonable and necessary. "Please, go ahead, Evelyn. I'm ready to hear all your terms." Evelyn looked him squarely in the eye, her expression more serious and sharp than ever. "First, I need absolute assurance of my personal safety. I will not become a target for anyone inside or outside the company who might resent your decision. And my real identity, Lauren Mitchell, must remain completely confidential." James instantly grasped the gravity of her request. He knew all too well the power of prejudice and the dangers Evelyn had faced in her past. "I promise you, Evelyn, the company will protect your identity and your safety at all costs. I will only publicize your professional credentials without revealing anything about your history or personal life." Evelyn nodded in approval, but pressed on, her voice firm. "I also need flexibility in my work schedule. I will come into the office when necessary, but I must also have the freedom to work from home or wherever I deem appropriate." James did not hesitate. "That's completely reasonable, Evelyn. I trust your ability to manage your time and workload." Evelyn paused, drawing in a deep breath, as if steeling herself for her final and most critical condition, one that would not only protect her but lay the foundation for a better future for everyone at the company. "And finally, the most important point," she said, meeting James's eyes with unwavering resolve. "You must publicly commit to a complete cultural overhaul. All forms of racial discrimination, no matter how small, must be eradicated. I will not tolerate any jokes or insults regarding skin color, race, or social status from anyone in the company, especially its leadership." James was silent for a long moment, truly absorbing Evelyn's words. He recognized that this wasn't merely a request. It was a non-negotiable demand if he was serious about making amends. Discriminatory culture had not only been his personal failing, but a chronic disease that had silently spread throughout the organization for years. "I understand, Evelyn," James finally said, his voice solemn and sincere. "I commit to leading a top-to-bottom transformation. We will review and revise every policy and procedure to ensure no trace of discrimination remains. I will personally announce this to the entire company and will tolerate no breaches of this pledge." Evelyn watched James's face as he spoke. She saw genuine seriousness and sincerity, but she still felt compelled to emphasize once more. "Mr. Whitmore, you must grasp how critical this is. This isn't something you can fix with empty words. You will need to change from the inside out, from how you treat employees to how the company values every person." James met her gaze, feeling the weight of responsibility in her words like never before. He nodded firmly, respect and determination shining in his eyes. "I understand more clearly than ever, Evelyn. What I promise today is not just a duty, but a personal and moral obligation to you and to every employee who has suffered injustice here." Evelyn studied him quietly for a moment, then extended her hand, a symbol of approval and partnership. James stepped forward and took her hand sincerely. That handshake marked a profound commitment between them. "I accept your conditions, Evelyn. I will not disappoint you," James said softly, his voice rich with genuine emotion. Evelyn offered a small, warm smile, the first time her smile had carried such clear warmth and hope. "I hope you truly follow through, Mr. Whitmore. Not just for me, but for everyone at this company who deserves respect and fair recognition." James nodded gently, fully aware that this was the greatest turning point of his life, the moment he truly became the man he always believed himself to be, and the opportunity given to him by no one else but Evelyn Carter, the woman he had so thoughtlessly underestimated for more than 15 years. James's sincere commitment quickly rippled through the company like a wave of change, bringing both hope and anxiety. But not everyone was pleased or ready to embrace such a radical shift. Beneath forced smiles, skeptical and wary glances sprang up in the hidden corners of the organization. From the very first day Evelyn entered her new office in the international department, she felt the chill and distance of a clique of veteran directors, led by Stephen Hayes, the long-standing executive director of foreign affairs, famous for his conservative views and attachment to outdated traditions. Stephen had never concealed his opposition to the diversity policies James had publicly announced. At Evelyn's first internal meeting as department head, Stephen repeatedly interrupted her, deliberately tossing out complex jargon and pointed questions to show his blatant lack of cooperation. Though her other colleagues remained silent, their anxious, hesitant stares spoke volumes, as if they expected Evelyn to stumble at this initial hurdle. But Evelyn was not easily rattled by such provocations. With her trademark calm, she answered Stephen's toughest questions with astonishing professionalism and clarity, leaving him no opening to continue his attacks. When the meeting ended, everyone was stunned to see even Stephen forced to grudgingly acknowledge Evelyn's superior expertise, his face still brimming with resentment. Yet the resistance did not end there. In the days that followed, Evelyn faced invisible roadblocks set up by Stephen's closest allies. Critical documents mysteriously went missing before major meetings. The information she needed to make decisions was delayed or delivered incompletely at the last minute. Evelyn recognized this was no accident, but a deliberate plan to pressure her into abandoning a position they believed she did not deserve. Rumors also circulated viciously throughout the company, claiming Evelyn had been appointed only because of James's personal favoritism and not on her own merits. They said the diversity policy was a mere cover for unfair preferential treatment, predicting she would fail spectacularly. Evelyn was quite aware of these whispers, but instead of getting drawn into anger or doubt, she chose silence and poured all her energy into her work. Armed with the resilience forged by years of injustice, Evelyn began to prove her worth in the most concrete way possible. Within just a few short weeks, Evelyn successfully closed several complex international contracts that had long challenged the department. She leveraged her deep cultural knowledge, linguistic skill, and negotiation expertise to resolve conflicts of interest and secure agreements that far exceeded everyone's expectations. This success split the company into two camps. Some employees, especially younger, more progressive colleagues, gradually became convinced by Evelyn's exceptional competence and began treating her with genuine respect instead of reluctant acceptance. However, Stephen and his cronies refused to abandon their plan to undermine her. They secretly convened a small meeting of senior directors to plot even greater pressure, hoping to force Evelyn to relinquish her new role. But their schemes could not stay hidden for long. James, now truly awakened to his earlier failures, had been watching closely and was fully aware of the internal machinations. One late afternoon, He personally came to Evelyn's office, his face a mix of concern and anger. "I know exactly what Stephen and some others have been doing to you, Evelyn. I'm deeply sorry and outraged by their actions. If you wish, I'm prepared to fire anyone involved. Just say the word." Evelyn offered him a gentle but confident smile. "Mr. Whitmore, I appreciate your concern, but I don't want anyone dismissed. I'll prove to them on my own that they were wrong to underestimate me. In the end, results and performance will speak louder than any rumor." James looked at Evelyn with growing respect and nodded in agreement. He understood more clearly than ever that this remarkable woman was not only talented and strong, she possessed a rare dignity and resolve, enough to overcome any obstacle or challenge. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn continued steadily surmounting every hurdle. She not only excelled at each project, but gradually changed the attitudes of those who had opposed her. Even Stephen, though never public in his admission, was forced to witness Evelyn's undeniable successes in silence. Ultimately, Evelyn proved to everyone that she deserved her position and recognition, not because of favoritism or special treatment, but simply on the strength of her own ability and character. In that powerful silence, she became a living symbol of positive change and a testament to the power of overcoming prejudice and injustice through competence, courage, and heart. Evelyn's successive successes in the international department gradually shifted the company's atmosphere. Those who had doubted and hesitated before began to show her genuine respect, but that only deepened the envy and hostility among those unwilling to embrace change. Behind courteous smiles and hollow praise, a dark conspiracy was quietly taking shape, waiting for its moment to plunge Evelyn into a bitter downfall. At the head of that scheme stood none other than Brian Turner, senior vice president and one of the company's most powerful figures. Sharp and ambitious, Brian was also notorious for his rigid conservatism and his quietly ingrained racial biases. The idea that Evelyn, a black woman from the lowest rung of the company hierarchy in his view, should wield authority equal to his was intolerable. One late evening, Brian secretly summoned a handful of trusted allies to a private conference room on the top floor of the Whitmore building. The dim light cast cold, calculating shadows across the faces of these powerful men, creating an atmosphere of tense, ominous foreboding. Seated at the head of the table, Brian regarded his colleagues with steely eyes and spoke in a grave tone. "We cannot allow someone like Evelyn Carter to continue leading the international department. The changes she's implementing aren't just unsettling the company, they directly threaten our interests. If we don't remove her soon, it will be us who lose control." One director, Paul Reynolds, head of finance, hesitated before speaking. "But Evelyn has been doing an excellent job. If we move openly against her, James won't let us get away with it." Brian's smile was icy, his gaze sharper than ever. "We don't need an open confrontation. I have a far more discreet and effective plan. Just one major mistake, enough to shake the company's confidence in her, and James himself won't be able to protect her." A hush fell as skeptical and curious glances turned toward Brian. He slowly produced a thick file, placed it on the table, and outlined his scheme step by step. They would sabotage a crucial upcoming contract worth over $100 million with Horizon. By subtly altering key documents at the last minute, introducing unfavorable clauses that Evelyn wouldn't spot in time, they would engineer a financial loss so severe that all blame would fall on her. Brian paused, a malicious grin curling his lips. "We'll ensure every piece of evidence points squarely at Evelyn. Then James and the board will have no choice but to declare her unfit for the position, perhaps even revert her to her old role." Around the table, some directors nodded in silent agreement. Others shared satisfied looks, and the dark plot was set in motion. Each member of Brian's group was assigned to manipulate the internal documentation and data systems to create the lavish mistake Evelyn would discover too late to correct. What they didn't anticipate, however, was that Evelyn was no easy mark. Years of silently enduring injustice had honed her keen sense for detecting the slightest irregularity. The moment a few critical documents mysteriously disappeared and then reappeared with suspicious alterations, Evelyn knew something was terribly wrong. Without hesitation, she quietly began a thorough audit, tracing every minor change in the company's internal systems. She uncovered unauthorized access logs from computers in the finance department and even from Brian's own office. Realizing the gravity of the conspiracy, Evelyn discreetly compiled all the necessary evidence, resolved to confront Brian and his co-conspirators head-on. One late afternoon, she strode into Brian's office unannounced. He blinked in surprise, but quickly masked it with his usual cold composure. "Evelyn, what can I do for you?" Evelyn met his gaze with unflinching resolve. "I think you know exactly why I'm here, Mr. Turner. I'm aware of the plot you and several others have orchestrated to destroy my reputation and career." Brian feigned nonchalance, a mocking smirk playing at his lips. "Evelyn, you're imagining things. You have no proof to back such baseless accusations." Evelyn's smile turned sharp as she calmly laid a thick dossier on his desk. "Here is all the evidence of your intentional interference. Altering internal documents to engineer a catastrophic error in the Horizon contract. I have enough information to prove that you and your allies are behind this." Brian's face drained of color, genuine panic flashing in his eyes as he took in the undeniable proof before him. Evelyn continued, her voice firm and resolute. "I've endured enough of these dirty tricks, Mr. Turner. I will not allow you to destroy my career and my reputation again." Brian fell silent, experiencing for the first time the full force of the indomitable resolve of the woman he had so long underestimated. Evelyn left his office with unwavering determination, knowing this battle was not yet over, but also that she had just won a crucial victory, the triumph of truth over darkness, and the victory of dignity over vile conspiracy. The moment the door to Brian's office clicked shut behind her, Evelyn understood that the real battle was only just beginning. Brian's sharp, furious glare as she left still burned in her mind, a reminder that he wouldn't give up easily. But this time, Evelyn was ready. She knew that justice doesn't come on its own. It must be won through courage, intelligence, and relentless perseverance. Over the next few days, Evelyn quietly reached out to a handful of honest, trustworthy colleagues. One was Rachel Collins, the head of HR, who had long opposed the lurking racism within the company. As soon as Evelyn shared the evidence she'd gathered, Rachel pledged her full support. At the same time, Evelyn enlisted the help of Daniel Lee, her old friend, who had aided her with the technical translation. Daniel agreed to comb through the system logs and file histories for any trace of tampering. With his assistance, Evelyn quickly assembled rock-solid technical proof showing that Brian and his co-conspirators had manipulated and altered internal documents to engineer a serious company crisis. A week later, Evelyn decided it was time for decisive action. She asked James to convene an emergency meeting of all senior leadership to lay out the truth. Once James learned the full extent of the conspiracy, he immediately agreed and pledged his unwavering backing. That morning, the tension in the grand conference room was palpable. Every director and senior manager was present, their eyes flicking between curiosity and concern as Evelyn took her place at the front. Brian sat in a corner, his expression icy, but his eyes betraying worry. James stood and spoke, his voice solemn and authoritative. Today's emergency meeting is to address a grave matter relating to our upcoming international contract with Horizon. Evelyn Carter has uncovered an internal sabotage plot, and I believe everyone deserves to hear the facts. He nodded to Evelyn in encouragement. Evelyn rose, stepped before the large screen, and began her presentation with calm confidence. Good morning, everyone. I'm not here to speak about myself, but to uphold the justice and integrity we claim as core company values. Over the past weeks, I've uncovered a dangerous scheme designed to ruin my reputation and to inflict significant harm on the company. Evelyn methodically displayed each piece of evidence: unauthorized computer access logs, deliberately altered document files, and secretly recorded conversations. Every item was clear, irrefutable, and directly implicated Brian Turner and his inner circle. Brian's face drained of color. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead, and his hands trembled beneath the table as the evidence flashed on the screen. He leapt to his feet, attempting to cut Evelyn off in a voice shaky with rage. This is all fabricated slander. You're trying to destroy me to cover up your own incompetence, Miss Carter. But Evelyn remained unflinching, meeting his gaze with steely resolve. Mr. Turner, every piece of evidence has been verified by independent technical experts. You cannot deny that you and your associates intentionally tampered with crucial documents to inflict serious damage and pin the blame on me. A profound silence fell as every eye turned to Brian, awaiting his response. He had nothing more to say. He knew, as well as anyone, that no excuse could withstand such definitively documented proof. James rose once more, his tone grave and decisive. Brian Turner, I am deeply disappointed and outraged by this betrayal. You've not only targeted a valued colleague, but jeopardized the company's interests and reputation. In light of this incontrovertible evidence, I hereby terminate your employment effective immediately and will pursue all necessary legal actions. Brian stood frozen, his face ashen. He slipped out of the room without a word, the weighty silence of stunned onlookers marking his departure. Turning to the assembled leadership, James's voice brimmed with genuine emotion. Today's events are a stark wake-up call, not just for me, but for this entire organization. We cannot tolerate any form of racism or abuse of power. Now is the time to change how we treat one another, to build a workplace that is fair and respectful to everyone, regardless of race or background. The room full of directors and managers nodded in solemn agreement, their eyes filled with respect and admiration for Evelyn. She gave a small, relieved smile, her heart swelling with pride. This victory wasn't merely personal. It was a triumph of dignity, justice, and truth over prejudice and dark conspiracy. A year has flown by since that dramatic meeting, but the memory of justice being served remains vivid in every Whitmore Innovations employee's mind. Profound and sweeping changes have been implemented thoroughly, infusing the entire company with fresh energy. The atmosphere in every office, every conference room, and in every exchanged glance is more open, sincere, and warm than ever before. Evelyn Carter has now been officially promoted to Senior Director, overseeing both the international division and corporate culture. Her role extends beyond ambitious contracts and global projects. It includes supervising, promoting, and nurturing a culture of equality, diversity, and respect throughout the organization. The bold policies Evelyn introduced, backed unequivocally by James, have completely transformed the company's landscape. Every employee, regardless of race, gender, background, or job title, is now evaluated fairly based on their abilities and character. Transparency and equity have become core principles in every company decision, leaving no room for prejudice or discrimination. James Whitmore, once a man harboring deep-seated biases, has also undergone a complete transformation. His past mistakes taught him the full scope of his responsibilities, not only to Evelyn, but to every employee. On the one-year anniversary of that pivotal meeting, James decided to convene a company-wide assembly to announce key changes and to publicly apologize to all staff who had suffered injustice or racism under his leadership in the previous company culture. That day, the large conference room was packed, each face reflecting hope and belief in the positive changes underway. Standing at the podium, James's voice trembled with emotion, yet rang with sincerity. "I was wrong, and I know it," he began. "Today, in front of all of you, I want to offer my deepest, most sincere apology to Evelyn Carter, the remarkable woman who taught me the most important lesson of my life. I also apologize to every employee of color at this company who endured injustice and prejudice because of me, and the culture we once had." He paused, then continued with resolve. "From this day forward, Whitmore Innovations is committed to building a workplace that is completely fair, transparent, and free of discrimination. Every opportunity will be granted to all employees equitably. I promise to defend and advance this culture vigorously and without compromise." Thunderous applause filled the room, and emotional faces turned toward Evelyn, who sat in the front row, offering a humble yet proud smile. This was the moment she had always dreamed of, but never dared to believe could happen. A moment when justice was served, truth was honored, and human dignity was unequivocally affirmed. Immediately after the meeting, Evelyn returned to her new office, a bright, spacious suite on the top floor of the building, once reserved for only the most powerful executives like James or Brian. On her desk sat a small but profoundly significant nameplate, engraved Evelyn Carter, Senior Director of International Relations and Corporate Culture. Evelyn picked up the nameplate slowly, emotion welling up inside her. It was more than a title. It was the resurrection of her personal honor, a testament to her perseverance, courage, and steadfast fight against injustice and prejudice. She glanced out the window at the vast sky, awash with light and promise. She remembered her early days, entering the Whitmore estate as an invisible housekeeper, enduring contempt and cold indifference. She recalled every step that had carried her through prejudice and dark schemes to arrive at this moment, standing tall in senior leadership with rightful pride and unbroken dignity. A soft knock sounded at the door. James entered with a genuine smile, holding a cup of coffee he'd made for her. "I just wanted to thank you again, Evelyn," he said, handing her the coffee. "What you've done hasn't just saved this company. It saved me from myself." Evelyn returned his smile, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. Your sincerity and resolve to change gave me hope that anyone can become better." James nodded, his eyes resting respectfully on the nameplate. "I know how far you've come to get here. I hope from now on you'll never doubt your worth and your strength." When James left, Evelyn stared at her nameplate once more, deeply moved. She placed it in the most prominent position on her desk, a powerful affirmation of the justice, equality, and self-respect she had always believed in. Outside, the brilliant sun lit up the sky, a promise of a hopeful future ahead, a future where human dignity is always upheld, where justice and truth triumph over prejudice and injustice. In that future, Evelyn Carter will forever stand as a living symbol of resilience, the power of self-respect, and an unwavering belief in the true value of every person. Evelyn Carter's journey reminds us of the incredible strength of perseverance, courage, and faith in justice. Sometimes, those who are most overlooked and mistreated are the very ones capable of changing the world around them, simply through their bravery and steadfast self-respect. What do you think of Evelyn's actions in this story? If you were in her shoes, how would you have faced these challenges? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, share this meaningful story with friends and family, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and profound stories coming soon. Thank you for being with us.